Namaste, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to part 3 of 3 of what makes a successful regulatory submission in the EU and in the US, once again, with our regulatory and clinical experts, ex-head of clinical compliance at BSI, Amie Smirthwaite, and ex-FDA lead reviewer, Ryan Randall. I've got 2 questions for you both, right? The first one is, what aspects of studies, clinical studies that is, if not addressed at the design stage, can prove to be insurmountable at the time of final regulatory submission? What has your experience been?
Yeah, I think from the FDA perspective in the US, I think things that can be insurmountable at the time of your marketing application, number one, you really want to pay attention to any study design considerations that FDA may have sent you in your IDE submission letter or any pre-submission feedback that they've provided you along the way. Because I think sometimes if you don't address those, before the study starts, or you don't provide a good scientific justification, it can be really hard for them to overcome that, especially because they might see it as, they may be disregarding our feedback or our thoughts, and may cause them to question, some of the data as well. And again, you can't really go back and change that after the study has been initiated. I think second, it's really important to make sure that the study is designed to enroll patients who will fit your intended use and your indications for use. Because I know it's one challenge that manufacturers may have if they're doing a global clinical study is making sure that all of their data applies to the U.S. patient population of interest. I've seen definitely some situations where manufacturers had a lot of trouble at the marketing application phase because their study, it may have enrolled 50% U.S. subjects and a lot from Europe or anywhere else, but maybe the patient population didn't fit the right proportions of patients with kidney disease, obesity, may not have fit the right age range for the patient population they're targeting. So those kinds of things are really difficult. So it's very important to make sure you are assessing that your study is designed to enroll the right types of patients to support your intended use and all the claims you're trying to make.
Obviously, compliance with 14155 is very important because that's the harmonized standard. Things as well like where the study is conducted, if you can't demonstrate that patient population is representative of a European population at the standard of care in the countries where the investigations are undertaken, if it's not similar, if it can't be justified as being similar to the standard of care in Europe, or things like we very often used to see, essentially feasibility studies. So, okay, you've done your initial feasibility study, but this hasn't been powered to demonstrate your primary endpoint. Right. And I think this can come up as well, that there can be cases where sort of going one step beyond that, obviously feasibility study clearly not acceptable or in most cases. But then you have things where they've demonstrated one endpoint, but the nature of the device is such that you really need data to demonstrate each of the particular indications. Yeah. And I think, another one that we used to see frequently is sort of justifications of having gone through the right sort of approvals with say, the competent authorities or ethics, or things like where the ethics committees made recommendations and said, oh, you should do this in your study, and that those recommendations weren't taken on board. So there's lots of different things that can come up where, if the device, if the study wasn't undertaken in compliance with 14155, if it wasn't, if the deviations from the protocol were such that it doesn't map to what was approved by or accepted by the competent authority, if this, if you haven't got the right patient populations, the right standard of care, etc., there's so many different things that can essentially make it difficult for the reviewer to say, actually this does meet the requirements.
Got it. Got it. Well, thank you both. Okay. Well, I have a very specific question, and this is around niche or orphan devices in the EU. So when it comes to these niche or orphan devices in the EU, there is currently, at least, there is no defined pathway in terms of the rigor that is otherwise expected of devices to be CE marked under the MDR today. Okay. And if I am to expand on this thought, technologies that target a rarefied patient population, think pediatric cardiovascular devices, or devices for underserved patient populations, think peripheral vasculature, below-the-knee arterial technologies, or chronic venous syndrome-focused technologies, where the benefit-risk story is clear, but large multi-center trials with strong statistical justifications aren't quite feasible. Now, in the US, there is the humanitarian use device option via the HDE pathway, but there is nothing like that in the EU as of now. Any thoughts on what we can look forward to in this space, Amie?
Yeah, and I think if you're looking at it from a point of view of allowing free sale as opposed to allowing use for a particular patient, and this is something that the EU has identified as a weakness, and I think there's been a lot of envy, particularly from manufacturers about the processes with the FDA. So there is an initiative to look at that and trying to make some of these orphan devices or devices with, where it's justifiable that you're not going to have this kind of clinical evidence. So they are looking at putting together a program like that. I think it's very complicated when you are trying to get new processes or new legislation through for 26, 27 different countries effectively, trying to get alignment on that. So, they can have the best rule in the world and say, oh, we want to have this out by the beginning of next year. But in practice, it takes a little bit longer to get it right into a sure alignment. But it is something that it does seem to be general agreement that there needs to be a pathway. And I think there was some fondness for the FDA model. So perhaps that will end up being reflected in the EU.
Excellent. Ryan, any thoughts on what your experience has been?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think the humanitarian use device and HDE pathway, it has been getting more attention. I definitely think that, it's because FDA has been really trying to encourage breakthrough devices and innovation. Going along with that, they're looking to ensure that they can stimulate innovation for underserved populations. So, situations where there may not be a good financial incentive for manufacturers to pursue treatments for populations that are, only 8,000 or fewer individuals in the U.S.
Pediatric a year, yeah.
So I think it offers a good pathway to help get treatments for those populations, and I think it works similar to a PMA type pathway, but HDEs they're exempt from effectiveness requirements in the regulations, and so it's really trying to demonstrate that the benefit risk profile for this population it is favorable, because like you said and like Amie said, it's extremely difficult to design a statistically powered study for such a small patient population. So I think it's a good program, and it seems to be getting more attention. And I think it's a good way for manufacturers to help patients who need these treatments.
Excellent. Well, Amie and Ryan, thank you so much for sharing all your experience and throwing so much light on what it really takes to make a successful regulatory submission in the EU and in the US. Both geographies where things tend to change, especially in the EU, things have changed a lot. A regulation the size of the MDR has never hit medical device manufacturers. Considering the advent of the FDA back in 1976, this is still one of the biggest seismic changes to have hit the medical device field. Thank you very much for all your work and sharing your expertise and helping medical device manufacturers place devices on the market. It's been a pleasure hearing from you, learning from you. Looking forward to more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.